My name is Karen, and I'm 33 years old. I have a family of 3, my husband, William, who is the same age as me, and our 3-year-old daughter, Evelyn. William's family runs a tutoring center. Both his parents were teachers, and he also has a teaching license. They are well educated and financially comfortable. Sometimes, I can't believe I'm part of such a family. At first, my parents and friends were worried about me, but there was no need. William's family is really kind and welcoming, even though I'm more of an athlete, and quite different from them. They accepted me with open arms. My mother-in-law was especially happy to have a daughter-in-law. I was nervous at first, but I decided to just be myself. I'm naturally cheerful and lively, so I built a good relationship with them over time. I'm a certified arborist, meaning I do health checks on trees, prune them, plant them, and move them around. I also offer consulting services. I worked hard to get my certification, and even though the job is physically demanding, I enjoy it. You need both knowledge and strength for this kind of work. I take care of my health and am strong for a woman. Currently, my husband works as a tutor in the family's tutoring center. He used to be an elementary school teacher. I first met him when I visited the school where he worked, for a meeting about tree care. After our daughter was born, I took parental leave but returned to work last year. Since our daughter is still young, I focus on my family. Thankfully, my workplace understands this. Sometimes, though, I can't make it in time to pick her up, and when that happens, my mother-in-law helps out, or my husband will pick her up if he can. I appreciate their support, and overall, my life has been fulfilling. But there is one person in my married life who causes me trouble, my sister-in-law, Sarah. She's married to William's brother, Richard, and they have a 5-year-old son. Richard is the oldest of William's 2 brothers. Sarah is mostly a housewife, but she also helps with the accounting and administration of the tutoring center. They are planning for their son to take an entrance exam for a private elementary school. From the first time I met Sarah at the in-laws' house, I knew she was a different kind of person. She is small, always dressed well, and her hair is always neat. I thought she was wonderful when I saw her smiling, but she has 2 sides to her personality. One time, when we were in the kitchen helping my mother-in-law, she left for a moment and then said to me, "Can't you do something about your appearance?" Sarah, who had been smiling, suddenly spoke in a completely different tone, and I thought she seemed like a different person. "You're always wearing clothes that look old and dirty. Don't you realize you're the only one who looks out of place here?" I'm embarrassed. I was a little surprised but replied, "Well, I find these clothes easy to move in. I have to chase after my daughter all the time because she's still little." Sarah sighed, as if she had more to say, but she stopped when she saw my mother-in-law coming back into the room. "What were you 2 talking about?" my mother-in-law asked. "Oh, we were just talking about our kids," Sarah quickly said with her usual sweet tone. She could change her attitude so fast. It was like she had a switch that turned on when my mother-in-law appeared. My mother-in-law nodded, as if to say, "Is that so?" And Sarah seemed happy with the answer. Even though I wasn't scared of Sarah, I didn't want to engage with her rude comments. I didn't want to upset my mother-in-law either. I know it's not unusual for people to have issues with their in-laws, so I thought I could handle it. After all, my mother-in-law has always been supportive of my career. Like a saint, I figured I could easily brush off Sarah's sarcastic remarks, but every time we saw each other, she would find new ways to put me down. One day, while I was out on a work errand, I bumped into Sarah. She was talking with some of her mom friends. We made eye contact, and I didn't want to be rude, so I said, "Hello, Sarah." She replied casually, "Oh, hi," and I moved on quickly since I was in a rush. But later that evening, she called my house. "What do you think you're doing?" she shouted at me, her voice full of anger. What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "Don't you ever approach me in public dressed like that," she yelled. "What's with your work outfit? I can't believe you'd walk around looking like that. Did you see us? You should at least try to look presentable, even if you don't have anything special going on. We're all moms here preparing our kids for private school entrance exams. We live in a different world from you." I was so embarrassed by her rude comments. I was wearing my work clothes because I had been working, so I replied, "I don't care about that. Just don't approach me when we meet outside, okay? It's embarrassing." She responded, "Isn't it even stranger? We're family, after all," she went on. "That's what I've been trying to tell you. You just don't fit into the family. And just so you know, I've never considered you a sister-in-law." Then she hung up the phone abruptly, leaving me shocked. She really went out of her way to call and express all her feelings. She often complains about me during family gatherings, but the worst part is, She only shows her true self when we're alone. Sarah prides herself on being a fashionable, high-class woman from a wealthy family. That's fine if she enjoys that lifestyle, but what I don't understand is why she feels the need to constantly attack me, just because I don't fit into her idea of the perfect family member. Yes, she always dresses elegantly, even in sports clothes, but why does she need so many? I wonder if her quiet husband, my brother-in-law, knows how much she shops. Maybe he doesn't even realize this side of her. It's just who she is. I've kept quiet about all this to my brother-in-law and mother-in-law, but I did mention it to my husband because it was becoming a real source of stress for me. At first, he shrugged it off, saying she doesn't seem that bad, but a few days later, my mother-in-law called me about a family dinner coming up that weekend. She wanted to let me know the time and place. We all live about 30 minutes away from each other, and usually, she doesn't interfere with her sons' lives. But she always insists on family gatherings for special occasions like my father-in-law's birthday, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. This time, it was to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday. She had reserved a private room at my father-in-law's favorite steakhouse. It would be our first time going there as a family, but the food is really good, and I was excited. I thanked her and told her I was looking forward to it, but deep down, I dreaded seeing Sarah again. "You don't sound very excited. Are you busy with work?" my mother-in-law asked, sensing my hesitation. "Oh, I'm fine, I'm perfectly fine," I quickly responded, trying to sound cheerful. I hoped I hadn't given away my true feelings. "If there's anything bothering you at home, please let me know," my mother-in-law said kindly. "I really appreciate all you do for us, even when work runs late." I was confused and didn't understand what she meant at first, but then the weekend arrived, and it was time for the dinner party. It was my father-in-law's birthday. A chance to show our gratitude. I promised myself I would celebrate happily and not let Sarah's comments bother me. I left home early and arrived at the restaurant's private room before anyone else. I was relieved to see that my father-in-law, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law hadn't arrived yet. I came early to avoid keeping my father-in-law waiting on his special day, and also because the less time I spent with Sarah, the better. I hoped the dinner would go smoothly, but my brother-in-law and Sarah showed up right after I did. "Hello, hi Karen, Richard, it's nice to see you." We all exchanged greetings. After that, my husband and brother-in-law started talking, but Sarah immediately came over to me, looked me up and down, and sighed. "What are you wearing? For such a fancy restaurant, you could have at least dressed better," she said in a low voice, starting her usual demeaning comments. I forced a smile and replied, "Is this really the time or place for that? I thought about the occasion when I picked this dress. Is it inappropriate?" I said, "It's not from a high-end brand, but..." She interrupted, "It's surprising you could even show up in such a cheap outfit. You have broad shoulders for a woman, so this dress doesn't suit you. And your accessories, just a wedding ring? You never wear nail polish, either, and your hands look rough." I calmly explained, "I can't wear nail polish for my job." "Isn't it hard to do household chores with long nails?" she asked. "My job involves working with wood and soil, plus household chores. My hands get rough, but that's not a problem for me. I'm proud of my strong hands and shoulders. They're a sign of the hard work I do as a gardener," I responded, feeling upset by her comments. But Sarah wasn't finished. "I really can't stand you," she snapped. "I've been trying to help you out of kindness, but you never listen, and now you're resisting. It's unbearable being around someone like you. You don't belong in this family." Her voice grew louder, and it felt like she was losing control. "This is my father-in-law's celebration today. Please don't ruin it," I said, trying to stay calm. But Sarah shot back, "You're the one ruining everything. You don't belong here. I can't eat with someone as shabby as you. Go home, go home." "This dinner was organized by my mother-in-law, and you're the one ruining it," I said, standing my ground. "I'll listen to your complaints later, but not now." But Sarah shouted, "Don't you dare talk back to me. Didn't you hear me? I said go home. In fact, leave this family." As Sarah got louder, my husband started to walk over, but just then, the door to the private room opened. My mother-in-law entered, followed by my father-in-law and their youngest son, John. My mother-in-law quietly but firmly closed the door behind them. Seeing her, Sarah suddenly stopped. She seemed to remember where she was and what was happening. She stood there, speechless, her mouth opening and closing in surprise. "Everyone, please sit down," my mother-in-law said softly, but with authority. We all obeyed. "It seems we need to talk before we can enjoy the birthday celebration. I'm sorry for the interruption." My father-in-law nodded in agreement. Then, my mother-in-law turned to Sarah. Sarah, what did you say to Karen? She asked, her voice calm but sharp. Even my usually kind mother-in-law could be tough when needed. Sarah, now flustered, stammered, "Oh, I was just saying I'm looking forward to today's meal." But my mother-in-law raised an eyebrow. "Did I hear wrong? I thought I heard you tell Karen to leave?" Sarah quickly backpedaled. No, that was just a small argument, just a joke." Despite her attempt to smile, she was clearly still upset, but I couldn't help but be impressed by how she tried to regain her usual cheerful tone. "A joke?" my mother-in-law asked. "What caused it?" "From what I heard, you were the one doing all the talking. Have you been treating Karen this way all this time?" My mother-in-law, looking straight at Sarah, spoke with a calm but serious tone. "I didn't bully her. I was just offering advice on manners and dress as a senior member of this household." "That didn't sound like advice," my mother-in-law replied. "Everyone should be free to wear what they want, as long as it's respectful. Karen wasn't dressed oddly, but you were criticizing her for wearing non-branded clothes at a high-end restaurant. Her makeup and accessories were minimal, but that's her choice. You shouldn't be embarrassed by what she wears." Suddenly, my mother-in-law raised her voice sharply, making both Sarah and me jump. The three brothers and my father-in-law remained calm, distracting the children with picture books, clearly used to my mother-in-law's anger when she was upset. "No, Sarah, you're the one who should be embarrassed," my mother-in-law said. "I've noticed something was off even at our family gatherings. I thought you were having friendly chats at first." "Friendly? Yes, friendly chats," Sarah stammered, her expression desperate, but I refused to meet her gaze. "For the record, Karen never complained about you. She kept quiet, hoping you would change your attitude, but you just made things worse," my mother-in-law continued. Sarah stammered, unable to respond. "You always wear beautiful clothes and have so many purses," my mother-in-law noted. "Yes, that's true. I always make sure to look presentable wherever I go," Sarah answered, trying to regain control. "Where does the money for that come from?" my mother-in-law asked, causing Sarah to freeze. "Of course, from my work. We're paying you for helping with the tuition and accounting at the tutoring center," my mother-in-law said, adding, "But even if my son said you could use that money freely, it doesn't seem like it would be enough. Your clothes and purses are all designer brands." Sarah, stunned, tried to respond. "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you using your control over the household finances to satisfy your own desires?" my mother-in-law asked. Sarah was taken aback, stammering, I don't understand." I had always wondered about the source of their money. I had assumed my brother-in-law was generous, maybe even trusting Sarah with all the finances, but now it seemed concerning. Perhaps he wasn't paying attention to how much she was spending. I almost felt sorry for him, realizing how much she controlled. My mother-in-law continued, "So, you've been spending money freely, and now you want to send your child to a private school. You've been saving up for their education, haven't you?" Well, you're not expecting us to pay, are you?" Sarah stammered. "No, not at all," Sarah quickly added, "but he's your adorable grandchild after all." "So, you've been planning to rely on my father-in-law and mother-in-law's money all along," my mother-in-law said. Sarah had been caught, and her true intentions were becoming clear. "We love our grandchildren," my mother-in-law said, "and we're thinking of supporting them financially if necessary." "Really?" Sarah asked, sounding surprised. "But only after you leave our home," my mother-in-law added. "What? No, there's no need for that," Sarah quickly protested. "I'll apologize to Karen for telling her to leave." "Karen, it's the first time she's referred to me by name," I said, not sure how to respond. "You will forgive me, right? We're sisters after all," Sarah said, trying to smooth things over. "Only while you're married to my brother-in-law," my mother-in-law said, signaling to me to continue. I took a deep breath and said, "Even if it's official, I don't want to become family. I don't think of you as a sister." Sarah seemed caught off guard and made an awkward noise, shocked by my response, but my mother-in-law wasn't done. "You've also been using the money from the tutoring school," she said. Sarah went silent, her face turning pale. "Is that true?" she asked, looking at my mother-in-law in disbelief. I was surprised too. I knew Sarah liked to spend money freely, but I didn't expect her to touch the funds from the tutoring center my in-laws ran. "You were careful not to get caught, so it took us a while to figure it out," my mother-in-law continued. "Even Bob, who's been in charge of our accounts for years, didn't see it, but we eventually discovered it." Sarah looked stunned. not knowing what to say. You bought things like gift baskets for the suppliers of our teaching materials, my mother-in-law explained. You said it was for expressing gratitude to teachers or holding seminars, but the amounts kept growing. You made excuses, saying these were birthday presents, or that my son or I asked you to buy them, but it wasn't true. No, that's not what I meant, Sarah stammered, trying to deny it. You bought things other than gift baskets, and labeled them as presents, my mother-in-law said firmly. This has never happened before. You told Bob you were taking part-time lectures to lunch, but instead you were dining and drinking tea with your mom friends. Sarah looked cornered, stammering, but it was clear she couldn't deny it anymore. The receipts kept piling up, my mother-in-law said. Bob started to suspect something, and soon after, he began his own investigation. You betrayed the trust of everyone who believed in you, my mother-in-law said firmly, her eyes fixed on Sarah. It seems that dressing up is more important to you than anything else. Sarah, now nearly in tears, turned to my brother-in-law, her voice barely a whisper, hoping for help, but he just stared at her coldly, saying nothing. If all of this is true, my mother-in-law continued, I can't blame him. Karen is the opposite. She may not be into fashion, but she always puts her family and her job first. You, however, don't seem to care about either. Sarah was left speechless, her usual bravado gone. My mother-in-law turned to me and began speaking about my work with pride. I felt a warmth in my eyes as she spoke about how much she respected me. You've worked so hard to get where you are. You're a certified professional, and I know how much effort you've put into your job. You never care if your clothes get dirty or if your hands are covered in soil, and yet Sarah mocks you for it. I remained quiet, feeling a wave of gratitude toward my mother-in-law, while Sarah hung her head low, unable to defend herself. Our tutoring school may not be as big as major corporations, but we value our teachers and students. We've earned their trust, and we've grown little by addressing individual issues. What's important is people and their hearts, not material things, my mother-in-law said. You're the one who doesn't belong here, she added. You're the one who should leave. Sarah, now defeated and silent, realized she could no longer pretend to be the perfect, elegant wife. The truth about her embezzling money from the tutoring school came to light, and she was forced to leave the family. My brother-in-law tried to discuss things with her, but Sarah refused to acknowledge her mistakes. Her anger led to divorce papers being served, and she lost everything. With the revelation of her embezzlement, she had no claim to compensation. She lost custody of their son, who would now stay with my brother-in-law and my in-laws. He had wanted to go to private school, but he disliked being forced to study. Instead, he was now happily playing with our daughter. My husband and I decided to support them in any way we could. A few days later, at a peaceful gathering at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law quietly came to me and said, I'm really sorry for making you uncomfortable for so long. We should have noticed sooner. I smiled and reassured her, no, not at all. At first, I wasn't really bothered by the situation, but then my mother-in-law said, if you ever need anything in the future, don't hesitate to tell us. I smiled and thought about her earlier words, what's important is people and hearts. As I was lost in thought, my mother-in-law noticed and gave me a puzzled look. It's nothing, I said quickly, I was just thinking how cool you are. Well, thank you, but the cool one is you, she replied. You're able to create such beautiful gardens. Maybe I should ask you to help with ours next time. I want to replant the flower bed. Absolutely, I'd love to help, even if it's not for work, I said eagerly, just let me know. Make sure you charge her, my husband teased, adding a playful comment. We all laughed together. Value people, cherish hearts, I thought to myself, reflecting on how much I appreciated my family. In the future, I hope to spend more time laughing with my precious family.